So this is the video where we cover hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling. It says to draw step value, hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling, and blending. We're going to do blending at a later project. So hatching step value scale is labeled underneath it. Cross-hatching is labeling the one above it as well. And stippling is labeling that one above as well. It's very important. I have quite a bit of information here. So dark is what belongs in these 1 boxes. The 1 boxes represent the dark value of the color. So each one should be dark and they should all match each other. Dark is almost all color. So in the case of blending, that's what this is, blending. It's as hard as you can press, but we'll get to that later. We're going to start with hatching. So hatching means it's going the same direction. It can be any direction, up or down, side to side. It's up to you. And you want to take your time and draw the lines neatly. That being said, each time I am putting my marker on the paper, I am picking it up so I can add more lines on top of it. That's going to create a dark value as I overlap them. So notice this matches this box right here. So that counts as a dark value. The next one is dark medium. That's mostly color and some white. So I need a little bit of white peeking through. More white that's showing through than this. So instead of them touching, I want them near each other. Super close to each other. They're almost touching. That way it looks different than the one next to it. I want to make sure dark and dark medium are step value scales, so very different than the one that's next to it. And if it's not dark enough, you can always add more to it. Next, we've got medium value. That's half white and half the color. So however thick your marker is, you want to leave a little bit of space. So I'm spreading it out just a tad. That way, again, I can make a big difference than number 2, which is a dark medium. This is medium, so it should be about the width of the marker. Again, about is fine. Light medium is mostly white and some color. So you only need to draw a few lines. You can make it close to this, but you want it to be a big difference. That way I can tell. So notice how much room there is in between the lines that leaves some color. The last one is white. So it's the whitest, the lightest value. So it says to leave white. So the different values we covered is light, means it's white, the color of the paper. Light medium, mostly white, some color. Medium, which is about half and half. Dark medium, which is mostly color and some white. And dark, which is almost completely all color. Now here, it says parallel lines. That's how I know I used hatching. Down here, I've got cross hatching. So notice hatching and hatching, that means they're both using lines. However, this time, it's intersecting or crossing. So parallel means same direction. So, with cross hatching, you can use any direction of line, just like hatching, but you have to make sure they cross. So I can start with diagonal lines and go back and add vertical lines. Or I could use horizontal lines as well, just as long as they intersect or cross. So I'm picking up my marker again each time I draw a line. And notice the outside, the edge of my rectangle is getting just as much attention as the inside. You don't want this to be a dark and then the outside to be a light or a light medium or any other value. So notice, if I compare my number 1 to this number 1, it's about the same. That's how I know I'm successful. So the next one, I do a little bit farther apart, so I have less lines next to each other than I had on the previous ones. So I see a little bit more white because it's dark medium. Next is 3, which is medium. So I spread it out even more since I'm using all 3 types of lines. Spreading it out a little bit more. So that's medium. I can tell that difference. Actually, it needs a little bit more darkness. There we go. That's about half and half. Next is light medium. Just like before, just do a couple lines. It doesn't need a lot. And I can even add some diagonal in there. Doesn't matter. So notice I can tell the difference between the two. Now when I'm looking at these two, I think 3 is a little bit dark. And that's okay. I just need to go make 2 a little bit darker so I can really tell that difference. Sometimes that happens, and now I can tell. So since this is a little bit closer, I'm going to go back and make sure, try to get all those white spots. So if you make a mistake and make something a little bit too dark, that's fine. Just make sure you go back. Now I can tell this is dark medium, this is medium, and this is light medium. Again, I'm leaving 5 alone because that says leave white, because white is the lightest value since that's the color of the paper. The next one is stippling. That's dots using marker. So instead of using your marker to stab, which would take forever, the easiest thing to do is draw your dots. So about that size is good. You don't want to do too much bigger, but that will take forever. So draw your dots and move your marker. Again, this is going to be a dark value, so your dots should be touching. And don't just scribble on the paper. I can tell. You want to draw dots that are really close to each other, and if you feel like it's too much white, then you overlap them. So notice, dark value has things that are overlapping and touching. Dark medium is when they are not overlapping and maybe touching a little bit, but they're closer to each other. Sorry. Dark has them closer to each other than dark medium does. Because the closer things are, the more of them you need to draw. And again, notice I'm paying attention to the edges of the paper. I'm not just leaving it black, or sorry, leaving it white. I want to make it a consistent dark value. So next is dark medium. I'm going to put them by each other, almost touching just a little bit. I'm going to give it a little bit more space. And if your hand starts to hurt like mine is, that's okay. Just take a break. Like I mentioned, you don't want to do too many dots because it does kind of hurt a little bit. Kind of did my dots a little bit small, so I'm going to go back in and add some where I can. You don't want to do super duper different size dots because then it doesn't look very neat, but you can go back and kind of fill in the spots that have a little bit too much white. So next is medium. This is where you draw your dot and you kind of skip a dot space. So you want to make it have a lot more room than you did in dark medium. That'll make a big difference between the two. And you always start with the dark just in case, because you want to get used to comparing it. So if I started with my light medium value, I may accidentally make it too dark, and that's not something you can fix. And just like before, just a few is fine. They don't need to be too many or even too close to each other. You want to leave some space. Be careful not to do too much here, otherwise you'll have to make this darker. So notice, again, I can compare all 3 to each other and they're about the same. That's the way I know all my 1s match. All your 2s should match as well. So notice they're all about the same. This is a little bit darker, but that's okay because this is a little bit darker because it's about half and half. Sometimes that happens. Here, all the 3s are the same, 4s are the same, and 5s are the same.